He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And before I sit down, I remember Gene, Mom and Dad had a cabin up in West Carlisle, near Coshocton, I guess. And Gene used to go visit there. And I remember, I don't think we were there when it happened, but they also used to have a precocious black and white cat. And they would always climb on the beams up above. And Gene was sleeping, I guess, on the couch, and all of a sudden the cat fell on him.
Bare chest.
Bare chested, yeah. That was an interesting thing to have. But they always told that story. We'll miss Gene. He's quite a guy. Always friendly, great. Always a great guy. Thank you.
Cousin Wendy compiled a life story of Gene for me to share with everybody today. Charles Gene Wilson was born at home in Pennsville, Ohio on April 13, 1942. His parents were Isla and Albert Wilson, and he was the youngest brother to siblings Richard and Rita, to whom he was always very close. As a young boy, Gene enjoyed athletics, and in particular, he liked to play with his backyard buddy Gary Truce. Little did Gene know this athletic ability would eventually inspire his future career. Gene grew up primarily in the Cleveland area, but often visited his extended family in southern Ohio. He had fond memories of family gatherings on porches and at meals. He revered his mother and was very proud of his father, reminiscing about them long after they were gone. As he grew up, Gene also began to develop his love of music and played the tuba at Berea High School, where he was first chair. After graduation from high school in 1960, Gene attended Ohio University briefly before meeting his future wife, Jean O'Boy, whom he married in June of 1966. A year later, Gene completed his Bachelor of Arts degree with a major in accounting and a minor in physical education at Baldwin Wallace College in Berea, Ohio. Gene's first career employment was in North Royalton, Ohio, where he taught bookkeeping and general business and served as the freshman basketball coach at E.E. Root High School. Gene's young family expanded in July of 1968 with the birth of his first daughter, Wendy. Within a few months, he and Gene moved with Wendy to Muncie, Indiana, to attend Ball State University. Both Gene and Jeannie earned their master's degrees in education before moving to Hagerstown, Maryland. Gene began teaching in Frederick County, Maryland in 1969. Not long after the move, his second daughter, Christy, was born in October of 1970. In 1973, Gene and the family moved to a new home in the Clover Hill subdivision just outside of Frederick. Frederick County was a small rural farming community back then, and over the next few years, Gene filled in as a PE teacher at 6 district elementary schools and as the junior varsity basketball coach at Middleton High School. Eventually, Gene became the full-time PE teacher at Yellow Springs Elementary School from 1976 to 1978, where both of his girls were enrolled as students. In the years that Gene taught at Yellow Springs Elementary School, he became a much-loved teacher to both peers and community members. He took on huge projects to improve the PE experience for youth, including a box tops for education program that bought incredible gymnastics, archery, and track equipment for all to enjoy. He then added an outdoor trail, an obstacle course, and oversaw other building improvements to the gym. All the while, he coordinated with the other specials teachers, as they were called back then, to sponsor music, art, and drama events, including an Olympic Day in the schools. From 1978 to 79, Gene took a sabbatical from teaching and returned to Ohio to earn his PhD, ABD, in physical education at Ohio State University. While on campus, he also served as a graduate teaching associate in a number of physical education courses and as a supervisor of elementary physical education majors. He resumed his K-12 teaching career in Frederick County in 1979, where he continued teaching physical education at Thurmont and West Frederick Middle Schools until his retirement in 1997. During the latter part of his career, Gene initiated many, often annual, countywide track and field events for elementary and middle school students. These events reflected his love of the Olympic sports ideals. Eventually, he began attending the U.S. Olympic Academy Education Council meetings, where he continued to engage youth with sports in many ways, both academic and athletic. During this time, he also mentored student teachers, served on numerous national, state, and local educational advisory panels, authored journal articles and curriculum guides, coached basketball at summer camps, served on the board of directors for the local chapter of the American Heart Association, and served as president of the United Methodist Men at Brook Hill United Methodist Church, where he also sang in the choir. Gene was exceptional at getting folks to work together for a cause. He initiated numerous fundraising projects. In addition to traditional events like celebrity basketball games, he organized a relief program for victims of Hurricane Hugo, sending over 46,000 pounds of potatoes, 3,000 tree seedlings, wrapped Christmas gifts, school supplies, clothing, and thousands of dollars in donations to Charleston, South Carolina. Similarly, after the bombing in Oklahoma City, Gene organized a relief fund that raised over $1,000, which was accompanied by a scrapbook of prayers, cards, and letters of sympathy for the grieving community. And closer to home, Gene worked tirelessly to develop an improved PE space for his inner city students at West Frederick MS, creating a state-of-the-art fitness, weight training, and game room. Throughout his career, Gene especially enjoyed traveling. He was invited to be a 1992 delegate and speaker on sport and young people at the International Congress of Physical Activity, Sport, and Development, sponsored by UNESCO in Tunisia. Gene was invited to the Olympic flame lighting ceremony in Olympia, Greece, in the spring of 1996. A few months later, he and Jeannie were selected to be volunteer officials at both the Atlanta Grand Prix track and field trials and at the Atlantic Olympic Games, where Gene was honored to serve as a master official who escorted elite athletes on and off the field. In 2004, Gene returned to Greece to make the arrangements for the International Track and Field Coaches Association Conference in Athens. Yet somehow, with all these things on his career plate, Gene also managed to be incredibly involved in raising his daughters. He helped with homework, attended sporting and other school events, carpooled to practices, and even went prom dress shopping. Gene took the family on amazing cross-country trips to Ohio, Florida, out west, Hawaii, Canada, and more, making travel in a station wagon some of the best memories a child could ask for. He even had the girls believing in a magic button under the steering column that would take the car to the nearest ice cream shop if they were good. And he never stopped showing Wendy and Christy how vitally important family was. Whether visiting family, friends, or a national park, Gene showed his girls how to live life fully and with integrity each and every day. After retiring, Gene opened a small business called Apollo Transportation Inc. The company provided airport transport, often for military personnel stationed at or visiting nearby Fort Detrick until 2000. With Christy and Wendy living in Virginia, and with the arrival of his grandsons, Josh in 1999 and Tucker in 2001, Gene and Jean decided to move from Frederick to the outskirts of Fredericksburg, Virginia. Gene embraced his role as grandfather, spending as much time as possible with the boys, who truly adored him. He joined Shady Grove United Methodist Church, and he and Christy became choir members there as well. Shortly after, Wendy and her family moved to Southwest Virginia in 2006. Gene and Christy moved to Bridgewater, where Christy had gone to college. While living there, Gene enjoyed visiting with neighbors, going to football games, gardening, and occasionally traveling to be with his siblings in Ohio and Florida. In 2020, just as the COVID-19 pandemic was beginning, Gene and Christy decided to move to Dublin, Virginia, to be closer to Wendy's family. Although community involvement was limited for about 2 years, Gene relished his time with family, frequently getting together for meals and other celebration gatherings. He enjoyed sitting on the porch, drives in the country, and watching old country western movies, or pretty much any ball games. Gene was truly a wonderful man, father, grandfather, husband, brother, uncle, friend, and teacher. He loved to dream big dreams, mostly about helping others, and he was quick to find humor when we needed it most, sometimes when we didn't. He was a humble man, but prided himself on personal hygiene and dressing well, and still having a full head of dark hair at 80. He appreciated everyone, embraced diversity, and was a champion for the underdog. He admired old cars, loved the Ohio State football team and marching band, and enjoyed sentimental things like pedal cars, antiques, toy trains, and Christmas villages that brought back fond childhood memories. He also loved to tell stories of days gone by, bringing those who were far away or who passed before him closer to all of us. He always valued the personal connections life offered, and somehow managed to see the best in everyone. He was a kind and generous soul, an inspiration and a role model to many, and he will be greatly missed.
I remember Gene, of course, we were just little kids. Our backyards met when the Wilsons moved in, and we must have moved into Berea around the same time. And I was 3 years old, and this little guy looked like Spanky in Our Gang Comedy. Remember that show on television? That's what Gene always reminded me as a little kid, like Spanky from Little Rascals. And from the first time we met, we were just gravitated towards each other, and we became buddies at that point, and grew up. And I remember, I think one of the first things we used to do was try to catch bugs and put stones and all kinds of junk that we found around the yard. And the neighbor next door had a Cocker Spaniel dog that was bit at everybody all the time. You'd walk by the house and the dog would come chasing after you, and Gene and I thought we were going to poison the dog. And we were, like I said, we were pulling weeds and putting stones and bugs and things like that. And we set a dish by the dog's house next door, and of course the dog never did eat it. But we thought we were going to get rid of that dog. And then Gene and I, we were growing up, and we were just elementary school kids, and Gene was a fast little runner. I mean, he was, you know, a little stockier, you know, but he was fast. And we used to go over and watch Baldwin Wallace track and field athletes when Harrison Dillard, this great Olympic champion, ran for Baldwin Wallace College. And Gene and I would meet with Harrison, and he was kind enough that he would come over and talk with us, and these two little kids, you know, and he was a college athlete. We just loved watching Harrison Dillard. And then Gene and I would go home and we'd run races down the street thinking we were track and field athletes also. And so we would always check to see who was faster, me or him. I was better in the long run, but he could beat me all the time in the short runs. Then we'd go swimming someplace, and Gene was like a motorboat in the water. I remember he'd get in the water, and he had some way that his feet would just boom, 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 just like a motor. I could never do that with my feet. But he was a fast swimmer. He was a quick little sprinter at the time, and we just had a blast growing up together and going through high school. Well, I moved out of town to North Royalton High School from Berea. I was only a fifth grader. We went to North Royalton, and it's a funny thing that I didn't realize it until you read it. Gene ended up teaching at the same high school that I went to, but which I thought was kind of interesting too. Another tie with the two of us as being buddies. So Gene then went away to college, and I went away to college. But before long, here we are, both at Baldwin Wallace College. And he was majoring in health and physical education, and so was I. So we went through college and had more good times there. And I know we went on further in life. And I was always interested in the things he did. And I think he was always interested in things I was doing. And I remember we first got out of college, and one of the funniest things, Gene had a hysterical laugh. If anybody ever heard Gene laugh, his laughter was just, it would make you laugh as well. We went camping with Richard and Ruth Ann. I was just out of high school, and we went down to the Smoky Mountains. We went way up in the top of the mountains. We were camping up there, and we had a good time camping. All the bears were getting into the car and stuff like that, but we had a great time. And then we rode riding horses and all of that, came back down into the town, and we stayed in Gatlinburg this one night. And it's one of the hardest times I've ever laughed in my life. Gene had to use the bathroom, and we were all in the same motel room. Gene, whatever he did in that bathroom, contaminated the whole room. We could smell it before he even got out of the bathroom. And when he got out of the bathroom, oh my gosh, you know, we wanted to get out of the room, get out of the hotel room, and we all started laughing so hard. We could not stop laughing. And it's one of the hardest times I ever laughed in my life. You know, when you laugh so hard that your stomach really hurts? And Gene's little incident in the bathroom just created a laughter that I'll never forget. So we had all these good times, and he did get into trouble one time with myself also. And I know Richard, Ruth Ann were in on this too. I came down to Florida to visit them, and they knew of a money-making thing that was going to make us all really rich. Purchase plus buyers group. And Richard and Ruth Ann kept saying, Richard and Gene kept saying, this is for real, this is for real. You put $400 in, you're going to get all this money back. So I came all the way down. We went to a convention here in Florida, They had all of the materials. They had videotapes. It was a big convention. They had speakers. And all of these people down there saying, this is for real, this is for real. Japanese people were putting thousands and thousands into this business. And some guy told me, oh yeah, you know, you can be a director. You put $20,000 in, it's going to be like you're going to be a millionaire. And so 20,000, well, maybe I can afford 20,000. I put 20,000 in. Gene bought 20,000 for himself to be a director. You could move immediately to being a director. He put 20,000 in. He also put another 20,000 in for Jeannie. She was going to be a director. We all lost our money. This was a big scam organization. I still don't know how they pulled it off, but we lost all of this money. Well, somehow we got over it, you know. But Gene was just an interesting person to be with. Even when things would go wrong, like you lose $20,000, you couldn't lose him as a friend. And so we continued on in life. And another interesting thing about Gene was he was totally unassuming. I worked in college athletics, and I worked with guys that were Division I coaches, and I saw the egos that some of these guys had. And if it wasn't for the recruits that they recruited, they would not be such great coaches. And they had these big egos, and they were jealous about other coaches from other schools. Gene had none of that. He was totally unassuming. And here Gene probably had more accomplishments than all of these guys with the big egos. Gene was well recognized by the United States Olympic Committee, the International Olympic Committee. He traveled to Greece for the lighting of the torches, all of this kind of thing. And all of the things he set up in those schools, he was not like the typical physical educators or coaches that you would see. He was an intelligent human being, and he never lost that. He never lost that down-to-earth person that he was. And I think that's why I gravitated to him, and I think he gravitated to me because we just weren't that kind of a person. He was just great all the way through, all the way to the end. And he never bragged about all the things that he was involved with. And he was one of the most impressive people that he was my best friend from 3 years old until the day that he finally passed away. And I'll never forget him. We were playmates forever.
Tell the paint story.
The paint story, well, that was Richard. When we were painting houses, Richard hired Gene and I to be painters. We were not good painters for him, I don't think. But Richard sent us on an assignment to paint some houses there on Seminary Street in Berea, and Gene and I'd be up there. We weren't painting. We were watching all the girls going by. Richard would come back and want to know how much we got done. We didn't get too much done. There were too many college girls walking up and down the street. But even when we painted, we laughed and laughed and laughed all the time about things. And again, that laugh that Gene had was his laugh. I've never heard another one like it. But he could, once he started laughing, you couldn't help but laugh with him. So yeah, Gene was the best. He was just great. So that's my story as his buddy.
Okay. Well, Gene was a great brother-in-law. I never had a brother that I was close to because my half-brother was married before I was born, so he was like a brother. And whenever he visited us and we went on trips together, he was always helping other people. He would help his sister's family multiple times, and anybody that was in need, he was always there to pitch in with dollars or work or whatever it would be. And he was just a great guy.
So my oldest or longest memory of Uncle Gene was he used to have a flat top, He used to have a flat top haircut for his early years, I guess. And as a little kid, I loved to rub on the top of his flat top. It was so soft, and so I remember always petting his flat top hairdo. That's my oldest memory.
I remember that. I'll say one more thing. Gene left the house that day to go pick up more paint or something. It was only Richard and I in the house that day. Let's pick up on that flat.
I would like to say,
Linda mentioned something about Gene's flat top haircut. And that came about back years ago when that style came in. And Gene, I was a little jealous because I could never get my hair to stand up and be flat like his. And I remember it was so smooth on top. I mean, you felt like you wanted to touch his hair like that. It was great. But one other thing about Gene, he was such a member of our family. We all really accepted Gene, and we would have track meets in the backyard. My dad would set up like a high jump bar, and we would run track meets around the backyard and all that, and Gene was always a part of it. But Gene lost his mother at an early age, and my mother took him in under her wing. Gene's teeth were coming in, and other teeth were growing in, and Gene still had a loose tooth, and the other tooth was being squeezed out and all of that type of thing. And so my mother saw his teeth. They were so loose and needed to be pulled. And Gene let my mother then begin to pull his teeth. And every time Gene had a loose tooth, he'd be over at my mom's house saying, "You think this is loose enough? Do you think this is loose enough?" And she'd end up being the one to pull all of his baby teeth. And I think he considered my mom to be almost like his second mom, because we fed him. Half the time he was there eating dinner with us or having lunch. My mom would pull his teeth, and so he was like a brother. He was just like a brother to me all those years.
I would like to say at this time just a few words. This family, we've already talked about it over in the house, about true family relationships are developed not on the surface of life, but sitting around like we have been, talking about the old times in our relationships. Today, it seems like that there's not very much talking with the cell phone in existence. I have nothing wrong with, see nothing wrong with cell phones, but they can be in the way sometimes. But Gary and his family have been a wonderful family relationship to us. And as a result, we have taken Gary as a second son. I'm serious.
Yeah.
We've enjoyed reminiscing all week.
Wonderful, wonderful,
Gary and
wonderful.
last night when
But if you as families want to know the value of family relationships, just talk to us and we'll, I'm sure, gladly relate the experiences to you. And this whole week so far has been a wonderful relationship for us, and this is the way, as a family, that we've gone through life. I'm on my way to 100. Today I'll be, I am 91 years of age.
Tomorrow.
And tomorrow. And I've already said when I reach the age of 100, everybody else will be dead. I'll have to make all new friends.
91's a prime number, so you're in your prime right now.
That's good. But I have a unique experience in life, and I've found it that way due to the fact of the ministry. You have an opportunity of meeting all kinds of people, and the real people are outside the church today. And I'm sure of that. I'm not saying that the ones that already are members of the local churches are no good, but many of them don't capture the real meaning of family relationships. And I want to again thank all of you for this opportunity, which is it's wonderful for us, especially for Gary and Lynn Wells. Lynn Wells is a family relationship. Lynn's father was a first cousin of mine, and so that's what I wanted to say, and I'll stick to it.
Yeah, I don't remember, when I ever first met Gene, but I've kind of known him all my life, I think, because of course he was several years older than what I am. And anyway, but I do kind of remember when he first went to Ohio University, being down at my grandparents, and then I was at him and Jeannie's wedding in 1966, wasn't it? At the Baldwin Wallace, the chapel, Lindsay Crossman Chapel at Baldwin Wallace, and the reception in the Union, because about 4 years later, I ended up attending BW for 2 years there, so we've got something in common there. And of course, they visited several times, and they hosted me at least on one occasion, maybe twice, when they were in Frederick, Maryland. And then sometime in probably the early 2000s, I was at a convention in Columbus and stopped by near the university to eat afterwards. And guess who I ran into? Gene and Jeannie, and they had been assisting with some of the track and field events, I think, that were either the state high school or some other track and field events that were hosted at the Ohio State University. And so we got to visit then, and then probably, I don't know if it was the very last, because met several times when they were back in Ohio, up at West Carlisle. But anyway, I was here in this general area in, 2011 there. I came down after a conference in Orlando, a computer conference, and stopped by. And anyway, so Richard and Gene and I went over that Saturday to St. Augustine. So that's one of the last times I got to see him. I'm not sure it was the very last, but anyway, a lot of good memories. So.
One of my earliest memories was like Linda. I loved Uncle Gene's flat top. Every time we visited, I always run my hand across the top of his head as many times as I could. I think my next memory was probably at their wedding, and it was a Catholic wedding because Gene was Catholic. And I remember thinking it was a beautiful service, but it was long. I couldn't believe how much longer it was, and I kept wondering how long before we got to have the reception and the cake and all the good stuff. But one of the things about Gene, like a lot of people have mentioned, he was so down to earth, and I don't remember until the very end of his life him ever being without a smile and laughing. It kind of broke my heart near the end when you could just tell he didn't have the spark he'd always had, and probably was doing everything he could just to manage and get by. He was a good role model and so much fun. Really gonna miss him.
When I was talking to him on the phone last time, we had a conversation, and I knew he wasn't doing well, and he was trying to recover from either a broken leg, broken hip, or something like that, and he was really going downhill. And this was just probably a few weeks or so before he died, and it was so touching that, you know, I told him, you know, that I loved him. You know, we've been friends all of our lives, and so before I hung up, I said, you know, Gene, I love you. You know, we're the best of buddies, and he said, I love you too, Gary. You know, and he also admitted that we were best of buddies, and that's the last time I talked to him.
I can think of one thing. Okay, one thing about the guys, they always liked Ohio State football. So, of course, watched every game we possibly could. And we had a habit at halftime of calling each other to compare notes on the game. And he talked to his brother every day on the phone, sometimes more than once a day during his last few months. But since he's gone, we're still doing the football thing. Christy calls us during halftime, or we call her. She says, I'm not trying to take Dad's place, but I'm kind of carrying forward the tradition. So we still, you know, talk to each other during the Ohio State halftime.
So the last time we visited Uncle Gene he was at the short-term rehab facility. It's the last time he got out of the hospital, and this was right before he went home, before he passed away. And he was telling Douglas and I how he was looking forward to coming down to St. Augustine and going to eat at Martin's. So he would be happy to know we're all here.
And that we're going to Martin's tomorrow.
Yeah.